On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, what the F.E.U. is going on with shipping containers and the price to ship a container. This story from American Shipper. Are you shipping me $32,000 container move from China to LA? $32,000. That's why it's very important today that I announce to you the formation of the Mercogliano Shipping Company. That's right, folks. If you have a container and you need to move it across the Pacific, I've got a boat for you. I will move your container across the Pacific for just under $32,000 a box. If you have more than one container, no worries. I've got more boats. I am happy to take your money from you and start shipping your containers from the Far East to the United States for $32,000 a box. On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, we're going to talk about this cascading effect of the escalation of rates in terms of shipping containers. So I am not opening up a shipping line, but I am Sal Mercogliano, Associate Professor of History at Campbell University, former merchant mariner, adjunct professor of maritime industry policy at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and just a gawk at what is going on in the shipping industry right now. So I've actually gotten quite a few notes from people asking about these rates and what do these rates mean, Sal? Why are they charging so much? Why was it only a few $1,000s to ship a container last year, and now you get quotes like $32,000? So let's break this down and talk about it. So one of the things that becomes clear in this story, and this is a story in American Shipper, this is by Erica Kolsich, put it in here. And one of the things he's saying, first of all, the $32,000 was probably not a true quote. It was basically telling somebody to go away, that we're not going to be able to ship anything for you. But one of the things we're seeing is the escalation in rates. As it talks about here, the index shows Asia to U.S. West Coast rates at $18,345. That's 6 times higher than a year ago. And then the rate to the East Coast, $19,620 per 40-foot equivalent unit. That's an F.E.U, by the way. That was my joke at the beginning. This has climbed 4%. And one of the things we're seeing here is the impact this is having. Low commodity shipping goods, low value equipment is not going to be shipped, not for that high of a rate. They're never going to be able to justify shipping that low value of products. And this market, he talks about it being a unicorn market. The big issue, he says here, there's the breakout consumer spending in North America, which has increased. Everyone's sitting at home. They start spending their money on stuff. And, everybody's got boxes heading to their house from, Amazon, Zulily, and all these other places are up. And so the United States has got this huge consumer frenzy going on right now. And he goes on here to talk about some other issues here. The resumption of normal activity at the massive Yantian port of China following a partial COVID-related quarantine was cause for optimism. But this month, wildfires have disrupted intermodal traffic. It's true. There's a major rail line that's been severed between Washington State and California, meaning you can't move goods that way. Devastating floods in Europe knocked out factories and river barge service. You can't move goods the way you normally do in Europe. COVID lockdown has created factory and port backlogs in Vietnam and Malaysia. We're seeing that. What happened in Yantian is now spreading in Southeast Asia. Civil unrest in South Africa forced ocean terminals in Durban to close. Also asked there was a cyber attack in that area. And then Typhoon Infa is causing shipping delays in China. Add to it, we've got delays in railheads. Union Pacific hasn't been moving containers for 2 weeks. All of this is creating this massive problem that we're seeing here. And you're seeing these escalating freight rates here that are being shown. You can see there's just this escalating rate here in the global composite index that Drury does, all the way up to $9,300. And there's a couple of things I'd like to highlight on this. And I think it's really important to really kind of start breaking it down. So there's another story here, right here. The different container indices, vastly different rates, which is right. So depending on which index you look at, you'll find different rates going across. And so the question is, what is it here? So right here, the latest assessment from Asia West Coast rates for the Shanghai Freight Index is about 5,380. S&P was 7,400. Zeta's was 8,697, while Drury's was 10,503. And the FBX was 18,346. Why are these so different? So a couple of things. Number one, what's causing these rates to escalate? Number one, when you have the backlog that we have right now. There's goods backlog, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. So you have to start paying extra costs. If ships are taking longer to get across and they're sitting there waiting in anchorages and the goods are sitting in terminals and it's taking longer to ship, you pay for that cost. You're paying for the ship to burn fuel. You're paying for anchorage fees. You're paying for ships to sit in terminals. You add all those charges on top of everything. And then what the container companies are doing, what these carriers are doing, is they're realizing ships are backing up. And so the lines are growing. And what they're basically doing is you may have a contract with a carrier to ship X amount of containers per month, per week across the Pacific. But now they're offering premium service. Premium service says you get to move to the front of the line because, listen, ships are moving slower, the cargo's backing up, and you're at the back of, you're maybe in the middle of the line. You want to jump to the front? Hey, grease that guy at the front door, a little bit of money, and we'll move you to the front. And the problem is they are doing this above, and above. And what we're seeing is this escalation in freight rates. You're getting, silver service, you're getting gold service, you're getting platinum service, you're getting diamond platinum service, you're getting all these services added on. And that's why these rates are so hard to follow. If you follow this article, and it's a great one, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to go through it too much because the numbers will just start making your head explode. But when you look at this is the Baltic Dry Index right here from China to North America. This is back in February, and you see, we're under 10,000, and all of a sudden, bing, pops up. Why is that happening? Why all of a sudden are these issues happening? And it goes to these premium charges. These premium charges are now being factored in. They weren't before. They haven't been in a lot of these shipping issues. And so we're seeing this eventually start coming up here. So Greg Miller does this. I think it's a great story that Greg Miller does. And so we're seeing this all kind of develop at this time. Actually, I don't want this story. So all of this comes in to the larger picture. What does this mean, Sal? So F.E.U's 40-foot equivalent units, TEU's 20-foot equivalent units are going much more expensive. What does this mean? Well, here's the impact right here. Number one, story out of G Captain. Freight broker CEOs see supply chain snarls lasting at least through February. Remember back in May, I told you, do your Christmas shopping now? This is it. This is going to see the delays. Everything needs to be moving now to get here in time for the Christmas season. End of August, early September, it's got to be moving. It's got to be moving by this time. If it's not moving, you're going to see the delays. And we're seeing this now. Add to it, we don't even know what's coming next. I can't tell you what's coming next. I have no idea what is coming next because every time anyone thinks they can read this market, they don't. U.S. ports face peak season gridlock plus as anchorages fill. So we had a great little talk by the CEO of the Port of Los Angeles saying, hey, we're catching up in the backlog. It's a great new day in Los Angeles. Everything's catching back up. No. Parking lot filled back up off of Los Angeles, Long Beach. This is Greg Miller's story from July 30th. That is the anchorage off Long Beach, Los Angeles, showing container ships off the docks right there. It is once again piling back up again. You can see the weight here with ships at anchor, ships on berth. It was going down, and now it's going back up again. And it's going back up at a pretty fast rate, I got to tell you. And so it is increasing. This is Oakland. This is the Port of Oakland. This doesn't even show you the anchorage off Oakland. This is the anchorage inside San Francisco Bay, trying to get into the terminal there at Oakland. So you have that right there. This is Seattle, Vancouver. The line off Seattle, Vancouver. Not as big, but again, Seattle, Vancouver is different because it is not as much rail and highway traffic you can get out. The population just isn't there. And again, you have those wildfires cutting off the rail lines. Again, more anchorages right here. This is on the East Coast. This is off of Savannah right here. This is the anchorages off Savannah, and that's off Galveston. Off Houston right there. So massive delays, all accumulating right here. We talked about the fact that the shutdown in Vietnam and Malaysia is causing problems. Add to it, by the way, China now isn't allowing ships into its port with Indian crews on board because of the outbreak of COVID in India. And the fact that India is using a version of the vaccine that's not approved by the WHO. And for some reason now China wants to follow the WHO, never knew before. But now they're sitting there saying they won't allow Indian crewed vessels into their port. That's slowing trade down because now these ship owners have to replace their crews with crews that the Chinese will let in. By the way, this is a big ploy, I'm convinced, to get Chinese crews on more and more ships. China is becoming the dominant seafarer group out there, trying to supplant India and a few others, the Philippines, and get more mariners out there. Even though there may not be Chinese flag vessels, you'll have Chinese crews on there. And that is a situation that's developing across the board. All of this means that the supply situation, again, is hitting a point where things are going to become more expensive. System is not breaking down. There's no shortages. There's delays, but there's no shortages. But the cost is going to start accumulating. And what's the response to that? What is the response to that? Well, one of the things we're seeing here is actions by the United States to investigate the carriers, the big shipping companies. FMC, the Federal Maritime Commission, which was part of the Maritime Administration up until 1961, they were together, all under a Deputy Secretary of Commerce. And then in 1961, the brilliant decision was made to split the two. The FMC looks out for the shippers, those who want to ship cargo, and then the Maritime Administration looks out for the carriers, mainly the U.S. flag carriers. The problem is there's not that many U.S. flag carriers anymore. The big carriers, the big shippers, top 10 container lines are all owned by foreign entities, foreign companies, and they control 85% of the world container fleet. And so FMC is beginning to make recommendations to address the supply chain issues. They've been investigating this since March, not March 2021, March 2020. Go back over a year. They've been investigating this. One of the Federal Maritime Commissioners, Rebecca Dye, who does a great job, I'm not slighting her at all, she released a report with 8 interim recommendations. And I'll include the recommendations in the show notes. You're free to take a look at them. But basically, I mean, what she's looking to do, and this is them right there. And if you can understand this gobbledygook, good luck to you. I study this topic all the time. I had to go in and research U.S. codes to find out exactly what they were talking about. I think the biggest problem you have right here, it's very hard to regulate companies that are not American companies. It just is. It just is. Their bottom line is profits. And shipping companies, especially container shipping companies, for a long time squeaked by with very thin marginal profits, very thin marginal profits. Now they're making money like a machine, printing money, literally. They're going to run this as long as they can. And not only that, they figured this out, I think. There's been a news report, I meant to pull it up and I'll have to find it, on what they call blank sailings, where they stop sailing vessels. Ships that were scheduled to sail aren't sailing. It's like buying an airline ticket. You show up at the airport and the plane's not going. Well, shipping does the same thing. Now they're doing blank sailings because they're saying, well, ships are so backlogged, it's just going to put more ships in the queue. And so they decide not to do it. The other issue that they realize with this is that when things start to resume back to normal, they will blank sail again to cause this again. I don't have proof they're going to do that, but the capitalist in me, and I'm a good red-blooded American capitalist, believe that, hey, like this profit, we like these generating these rates. Let's blank sail a batch of times and let's increase this. And I think we're going to see that happen again. This story here, the FMC and Department of Justice agree to collaborate on liner shipping antitrust issues. So now the issue is going to be antitrust. We're going to try to use antitrust legislation to break this up. Again, this would be great if there were American carriers involved in this, but they're not. These are foreign companies. They're incorporated overseas. It's going to be very hard to do antitrust legislation, especially when this has been going on now. The 9 of the top 10, the very top 9, as a matter of fact, are in 3 massive alliances. And since the Shipping Act of 1984, which has basically allowed this to happen, they have not really busted these things up. And so you get companies like Maersk and MSC, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, and the 2M Alliance, one of the biggest alliances out there. They can set the tone for trade. And I'm not exactly sure what the FMC and the DOJ think they're going to do here. Then you have this, which is the other element here that hit the other day. U.S. shipper accuses ocean carriers of colluding to raise spot market rates. So one of the reports that came out from the FMC, and there was a discussion by them, was they felt like shippers, those who were shipping goods, weren't coming to them because there was fear of retaliation, that if they came out and argued against the carriers, the foreign carrier companies, and even the American carrier companies, there would be retaliation there, that they would not get their cargo moved. And so one of the things that Rebecca Dye, one of the commissioners in the FMC, says is, we're going to start opening our books and running cases as if there are complaints. Well, here it is. Here's a shipper who is accusing them. MSC Industries, a family-owned home furnishing business, claims MSC and Costco, Mediterranean Shipping Company, and the Chinese Overseas Shipping Company, which, by the way, the Chinese Overseas Shipping Company owns 49% of the Mediterranean Shipping Company, failed to meet contractual obligations in violation of the 1984 U.S. Shipping Act. All right, I'm going to simplify this in a very simple manner. This Pennsylvania-based company had contracts with MSC and Costco to ship goods, and they made those at rates prior to the escalation of rates. So it's like booking your fare on an airline, and all of a sudden the airline rates go through the roof. But you already got your rate. You're locked in. You're good. Well, that's what they're arguing. We had our rate. We're locked in. But what's happening here is the shipping companies are bumping their cargo for these high value rates. And basically the U.S. company is saying, the timeout, that's not fair. It's not fair. It says right here, container load shipped from China to the U.S. West Coast in 2019 would have cost $2,700, but today, same container voyage would be in price of excess of $15,000. And that's it. Basically, according to MSC, Costco offered just 1.6 of the capacity it was contractually obliged to make available, while MSC fared better, offering 35% of the rate. So MSC is only making a third of their contracted space available. Costco is making 1.6. And remember, this is Costco, Chinese Overseas Shipping Company, not the big box company that you buy your toilet paper and everything else from. One's controlled by an evil foreign corporation, the other sails ships. Sorry, bad joke. But both these companies are arguing that, listen, hey, we've got to meet our needs of our customers here. We're making this. And they will dig up a portion of the contract, I'm sure, that gives them the right to kind of bump cargo because of quote unquote needs. But this is the genesis that the Federal Maritime Commission under the Shipping Act of 1984 have been looking for. And now it'll be interesting to see is how this case is made. Mediterranean Shipping Company is a very quiet kind of family-owned company, so you don't hear a lot about it. Chinese Overseas Shipping Company is one of the largest is the largest commercial liner in the world. It's second largest in terms of containers. It's changing very rapidly right now. And so this story, which again made all the major groups here. Again, there was on GCAP, and here's the one on American Shipper. U.S. company sues collusive ocean carriers alleging price manipulation. And then finally, this one right here, American manufacturer files landmark suit with the FMC over soaring liner charges. What happens with this? I have no idea. I wish I knew. I really do, because I'd be investing like crazy, either shorting or going long on shipping companies right now. But this is going to be an issue. The question, the big issue is I would argue this: the FMC does not move fast. It doesn't tend to move very quickly. And by the time this legislation comes in, or excuse me, this case comes in, we may be well beyond this. Plus, the shipping company, or excuse me, the shipper has got a very narrow window to get their product out, or else they're going to lose money. There's a potential for bankruptcy here if they don't move their cargo. If this company here, and I just blanked on the company's name right here, MSC Industries, which is out of Pennsylvania, if they're not able to get this legislated, this could be the end. $600,000 lawsuit they filed, which is, again, small potatoes in the case of the shipping companies, which are making billions right now each quarter. I mean, first quarter was huge in 2021. Second quarter is going to look to be even bigger. And I assume third and fourth quarter will be probably the same way. And again, there is no telling. And all this has to do with that escalating freight rates that we keep talking about. Go back to this article at the very beginning. Are you shipping me? Well, yeah, this is an amazing issue right now. We tend, when we talk about America being a sea power and America, economic power, we forget that the free oceans, the free movement is guaranteed by the U.S. Navy. Just the other day, that drone attack on the MT Mercer Street, Liberian flag tanker operated by an Israeli company owned by Japanese is under escort by U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy ensures the open of the sea. With the U.S. Navy pays for this. Yet right now, American companies and American businesses are losing out because they can't get on ships to use those highways, those interocean highways, which are protected by the U.S. Navy. And that's a strange irony, I have to tell you. It's a strange irony that here we are spending all this money to ensure the world has free open trade, and our trade is being stifled right in the ports. And that is an issue that we should be talking about more, but we're not. So when we talk about infrastructure, this is the kind of stuff we should be talking about. All right. On this side note, and let me recommend again, the Mercagliano Shipping Company is coming to you very soon, shortly. Contact your freight forwarders immediately, and I'll be sure to see what I can do to get you a container across the Pacific at less than $32,000 a box. If you enjoyed this episode, and I can't understand why you wouldn't, it's full of factual information and jokes, bad jokes, but jokes nevertheless, then hit subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out and what's going on with shipping. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it across the social media spectrum. This is a story that is going to continue to develop. And where it goes, I have no idea. But I'm in for the ride. I hope you are too. This is Sal signing off.